Hey there, internets. So, a very late Saturday night rant. Welcome back to From My Grandfather's Desk. I am Pat. Right up from the start, if you find value in this, smash that like button, leave a comment. It helps drive the algorithm because sometimes the algorithm doesn't like what I have to talk about. Sometimes it does. Maybe this one will even have something that maybe it wants to throw out there because of the subject matter. So, this week, for Saturday Night Rant, let's start with FTX. Last couple of weeks, it collapsed. It was a company run by a gentleman by the name of, make sure you have the name out right, Sam Bankman-Fried. And there's people talking Ukrainian money laundering and not. What I've gathered to this is, it gets into why, as far as I'm concerned, crypto is a scam. I've long said it's a scam. Quit trying to tell me it's not a scam. It's a scam. Because for all of us that like paper money, or think paper money is great, paper money is a promise to pay. It says Federal Reserve note. Now, locked away and see if I have a couple of bills that say silver certificate. And those used to represent an actual amount of gold or silver in the U.S. Treasury. U.S. Treasury does have a pile of silver or gold, a smaller pile of silver. I'm not buying into this conspiracy theory that they sold it off and it's all fake in Fort Knox. Okay, they still do have that. Conveniently, so does the Federal Reserve have about an equal amount of gold. Why do I bring this up? Because what it led to was FTX, and I saw an article called the Lehman moment, almost like the Enron moment. They were playing games with apparently shifting money back and forth, taking it from here and putting it here and putting it here and putting it here, and they had their own cryptocurrency that they were heavily invested in. And when one person saw that and said, "You know what, we're out," whole thing went down, whole companies come down. At the same time, they had set up a portal for Ukraine to receive cryptocurrency as donations. And I have an article once I get this thing uploaded from my phone. It will show. It actually talks about this, and the AP was kind of fact checking it. But I also found an older article from way back in March 26th, that says crypto for Ukraine provides a flow of war-related assistance. It was people donating themselves to Ukraine. This would be individuals, maybe organizations, non-governmental organizations, maybe businesses, not that I know of. 80% of that was just simply, you donate the crypto, they sell the crypto, they take the cash, they put it in the Bank of Ukraine, then the Bank of Ukraine uses it to buy weapons or other aid. So it wasn't a Ukraine's investing in FTX with the tax dollars we sent them. Understand, when I read through one of the Ukraine aid bills, and I went through this bill, I was looking for things that were really questionable. Some of it was just, provide this extra money to the Department of Defense for this. Department of Defense, this money goes to do humanitarian aid. The most questionable thing I found, and the reason I didn't make a video of it, was the relatively tiny amount to $40 billion, was there was a payment to an Alaska congressman who, to his widow, he had died like a month before. Nothing corrupt there, it would just pay off his widow his entire year's salary, even though he's no longer in existence, which never happens for us in the private sector. If I kick the bucket tomorrow, my wife ain't getting a year's salary from my boss, okay? But it wasn't all direct cash to Ukraine. But this guy did give large amounts of money to politics. I had heard as high as $48 million. And it says Oh, and the AP article fact-checking whether it was a money laundering operation said, well, he gave to both, and it was mostly Democrats, and it tries to address it, but notes $27 million to one organization, and then it shows, find it here. It talks about how much he gave to where is it? I'm not finding it here now. Oh, here it is. It's true that it says here in an AP article, and this is one I'll link to. It's true that Bankman-Fried has been a major Democratic donor. FEC records show that he made significant donations to Democratic candidates and PACs this year, including $27 million donation to Protect Our Future PAC, which supports mostly Democratic candidates. However, he also made contributions to some Republican candidates and conservative-leaning PACs, including $100,000 to Alabama Conservatives Fund. Needless to say, $100,000 is a lot different than $27 million. If I go to the FEC records, we got $5 million to Blue Nevada PAC, $4 million to Across the Aisle PAC, $2,900 to Salad Carbajal for Congress. I don't know who that is. We have a Nevadans for Stephen Horsford. It's a state, California. Why you would do it in California for a Nevadan race, I have no idea. Lots of little $2,900 ones. South Dakota Democratic Party, almost $10,000. West Virginia State Democratic Executive Committee, XCOM, I assume is Executive Committee, almost $10,000. So there are a lot of smaller donations, but there are all these Democratic state committees, Democratic Party, all the way down. Democratic State Central Committee of Louisiana, and those are all at $9,756.20. A whole bunch of Democrats, and it's multiple pages. There's 161 entries, and I am not pawing through all of those. Gillibrand Victory Fund. I don't think that was going. Gillibrand for Senate. Gillibrand for Senate. That would and so on. That's why she's raising that much money. I don't know. She wasn't running this year, Kristen Gillibrand. But we got lots. Oh, here's a $400,000 Democratic Grassroots Victory Fund. Needless to say, there was a lot of money going to Democrats. Not much going to NRCC. That would be a Republican group. We got an $8,500 donation and a $36,000 donation. Again, not in the grand scheme of $48 million total is a number I had heard. That's pennies. Lots of money going out, though, to Democrats. So he is a Democratic donor. They get to own this one. Sometimes you get guys that do play both sides. Sean Patrick Maloney for Congress. He made 2 donations to that guy, probably one for the primary, one for the... I think you're allowed $5,400 federally. So, just pawing through these, it's a Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, $30,000. Oh, here's a $6 million House Majority PAC. That was Democrats. House Majority PAC, that was one run by Nancy Pelosi. So he basically gave Nancy Pelosi $6 million. $10 million to Protect Our Future PAC. So lots and lots of them for Democratic different groups. DNC Services Corp, Democratic National Committee, $100,000, over $100,000. Actually, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll just link directly to this, but you got about $1 million roughly close to $1 million in about 4 or 5 separate transactions. About $1 million there. So there's a lot of rather interesting ones. Like I said, there's a few that are pretty obviously Republicans, but not a lot. So he'd given money, and it had collapsed because everyone saw that he was invested in just the one crypto. Here's the problem with crypto. Fiat currency, it's worth what you say it is. You say, I think this is worth $100. Or more importantly, I think your barrel of oil is worth 100 of these pieces of paper. There's no other commodity behind it. Ultimately, if crypto is valued in fiat currency, it is still a fiat currency. And they say they can't just create more. But a lot of this is not that transparent. Yes, no one controls it. But crypto, whether it's Bitcoin or any of the others, whoever has the ability to change the way the algorithm works can change how often more can be made. It is ultimately a fiat currency. There is no real asset to that. You could argue it's a paper asset like a stock, but a stock is a share of a company. So it's a share of all the things that make up that company, not just a piece of paper. To my understanding of Bitcoin, if we got a Carrington type event with an EMP, with the electromagnetic part of that, wipes out all of our technology, all that cryptocurrency is gone. Your paper money, if it's actual paper, you might still be there, but what's it worth? Because ultimately, the commodities you need to rebuild society or continue society are what you need. And that's the beauty of this little silver medallion. It's a 1 ounce silver. That is a physical commodity. Yes, people can go invest in gold, and in theory it's held somewhere, but unless you hold it yourself, it's just as much a paper asset as far as I'm concerned. But I happen to have this silver medallion out, and makes the point. That's 1 ounce of silver. You cut it in half, it's still 1 ounce of silver. You melt it down into something else, it's still 1 ounce of silver. Yes, you could use it for industrial uses, but here's the thing. When I was looking to invest in a little bit of silver, years ago, my late aunt, she sent me a book called The Silver Bomb, and of course a third of the book is why you should buy their silver products, but it gives a history of money. Gold and silver were used, metal for money, because they were sufficiently rare that you could ascribe a value to them, and it could be combined, split up, recombined, turned into something else. It was a commodity, and it could be a store of wealth. It didn't rot. If you put grain in a silo, the silo leaks, you lose the grain. You put grain in a silo, you eat the grain, you've lost the grain. Silver, I had some during the flood. It was in a position where it got wet. It's still so good silver. Unfortunately, better than the ammunition that got wet. I gotta get rid of that, but safely. And I do believe in accountability and responsibility. That's still good. Other commodities are not. So ultimately, that's the problem with Bitcoin. If you have the Bitcoin stored, the codes for it stored on a computer, and the computer's destroyed, they're gone. Toast. Kablooey. If you have your Bitcoin stored somewhere and that's destroyed, they're destroyed. Same thing with paper money. So this whole Bitcoin cryptocurrency thing, I have never been willing to risk it. When it was really going up, I was like, man, I should have done that. But then I thought, with my luck, I wouldn't catch it. I'd catch it too late on the rise, or sell too late on the fall. I wouldn't catch it where I'd actually make any money. I didn't do it. I'm kind of glad I didn't because it all crashed recently. And it could do that at any time. So that's how everyone pumped up cryptocurrencies, and that happened. Now, needless to say, the scandal does not appear to be there on the money laundering thing. Is it worth investigating more deeply? Probably. Because you go through this FEC report and it says who the employer is. But being as he was pretty much the founder, I don't know that was I think it was a publicly traded company. Who knows where he may have gotten a bonus that he otherwise wouldn't have. You can look into that. That's perfectly acceptable to look into how that all went down. In addition, Republicans now taking the House. I am trying to work on a video of, let's post-mortem this and see why Republicans didn't do as well. I'm starting with just kind of the most big elephants in the room, which is, did Trump have an effect? I'm trying to look objectively. But they're going to investigate Hunter Biden. Hopefully they'll investigate this, at least so it's given a look. Publicly, not just a few news articles. They're going to investigate Hunter Biden. How close is Biden tied to a lot of his son's financial dealings? How do those affect other things? But as far as this particular scandal doesn't seems to be there's smoke. Doesn't look like what's burnt, what you think is burning. So that was one of the big things this week. The other thing this week, though, also related to Ukraine, conveniently, a missile hit Poland. Maybe 2 missiles hit Poland. A couple of people were killed. So let's think about this a minute. It's on the border. Yes, there's a war going on in Ukraine. Russia does, at times, target stuff on the border. People have wondered if Russia didn't blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, kind of as a, well, fine, if we're going to make sure you can't ever buy our natural gas. Others say that it was, saying, oh, maybe the Americans were creating a false flag. It really doesn't matter because you could make arguments anyway. So let's look at this one. Is it in Russia's interest to draw on the United States? No. Now, there are elements in Russia that were protesting in Moscow with signs saying, we'll be the martyrs for destroy Washington, D.C. We'll be martyrs here because they're full willing, supposedly, to die in a nuclear holocaust launched by the United States. I'm going to have to say that, yes, there are people that are that crazy. I remember seeing an article where someone was talking about how there are people who seem to think they need to go after the other guys no matter what. They're just going to take them down with them, even if it means going down with them. And this guy I think he had been born in the Soviet Union. His family had fled the Soviet Union when it formed, or something to that effect. He hated communism and Soviet Union so much. Now, that's an evil system, to be sure. If you're a socialist, you cannot be a good person. It's one or the other, okay? Either you're a socialist or you're a good person. Not both. That's impossible. But he hated the Soviet Union so much. He was pushing, he wanted to have a nuclear war because he wanted to destroy them so bad. Are there those kind of people? Yes. It's not in Russia's interest to draw in Poland and other NATO countries because they can't stand against it. And then it turns into a nuclear conflict and everybody loses. Unless, of course, you think that NATO won't respond. And 3 NATO countries, us, Britain, and France, have nuclear weapons. It's not a one country's decision. You nuke Warsaw, maybe Biden has no spine, which wouldn't surprise me. But the new UK Prime Minister, who's a conservative, goes, I don't think so. Prime Minister Sunak, I think or Sunak? I hope I'm pronouncing his He's of Indian descent. He goes, I don't think so, Mr. Putin. Moscow, St. Petersburg, Volgograd. Try it again. Okay. There's 3, or maybe Prime Minister French President Macron does that right down the line. There's 3 countries that could respond. So it doesn't make sense that Russia would target anything in Poland. So that leaves us with it was not intentional. Russia says they weren't targeting anything inside that near the border. I don't know. You could argue they were. You could argue they don't. If something was shot and it, okay, we're shooting at this missile. Boom. Hey, we got it. It's flying, not hitting our target. Oops, it hit across the border. Hope nobody got hurt. If that happened, accident, not something to go Article 5 on. That's going to happen. We had a cruise missile end up in Iran when we went into Iraq. We weren't attacking Iran. We just weren't being cautious enough along the border. Another possibility, and this is what Poland says it actually might have been. Ukrainians go to fire an anti-aircraft missile at something the Russians sent. Missile malfunctions. Something else hits the target, completely misses. The Ukrainian missile accidentally ends up in Ukraine. Again, not intentional, accidental. And then there's a more disturbing possibility. Ukraine fires a missile. It lands in Poland. Somebody gets killed. Ukraine says, hey, the Russians did it. Obviously, the Russians must have done it. Why would we do this to you? Because we're trying to help you. You might have to think about, maybe it's time for you to go after the Russians or come help us. And, some people have even put the prospect of a NATO country did it to create its own false flag. Regardless of where this, and it's also possible, a Russian missile ended up in western Poland, and this is what no one's talking about. This is purely my own speculation, just tossing this out here as a possibility. We got hit with a Russian missile. Do we want to go in and pick a fight? Let's just say we think it was a Ukrainian missile. Here's the thing. Zelensky is swearing up and down it could not have been a Ukrainian missile. It could not have been a Ukrainian missile. It had to be a Russian missile. Blame the Russians. Russians say it wasn't them. Zelensky says it wasn't a Ukrainian missile. The Poles say it was a Ukrainian missile. Somewhere in there, either everybody's wrong somehow or someone's lying. I personally think Zelensky is lying, and here's why. It's not in the Russians' interest to draw on NATO. It is entirely within Ukraine's interest to draw in NATO. It is not in our interest to get drawn into Ukraine unless you have leadership looking to get in a fight. Some people have suggested that it's disputed by some, but it's commonly held that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was a false flag, an excuse for the United States to get into Vietnam. Others will say that North Korea boats attacked a carrier. And sometimes you get somebody way down the food chain of life that gets hot-headed and does something on their own. It's entirely possible. A North Vietnamese torpedo boat commander said, I've had it with these Americans. Let's go ahead and fire on them. And later he's getting his ass chewed or he got himself killed in the process. There's accusations that Israel attacked one of our ships during their wars to try and create a situation, make it look like the Arabs attacked one of our ships to draw us into their side, into their war on their side. Okay, people come up with these things. I think Zelensky's lying about it being a Ukrainian missile. Now, I'm not going to say that he deliberately had someone target of NATO location. but it might have been a missile that was fired by them, went awry, and he's not willing to own up to it. Maybe he thinks it's going to be bad PR. What's not good PR with me is that somebody, somewhere, is lying. That is open to debate, but somebody's not being straight with everybody else. Somebody knows whose missile that was. Somebody knows where it was fired. Somebody is not being truthful. Because it could be Poland. It's a lot of restraint on Poland's case if they're saying it was not a Russian missile and it was a Russian missile. It's almost a white lie. Or maybe even is a white lie to prevent war. Or further war. If it was a... And the Defense Department's backing Poland, as the case may be. If Zelensky knows it was a Ukrainian missile, he needs to own up to it. This guy is kind of starting to piss me off. He's constantly crying for more aid, constantly acting like we're supposed to get involved, saying this already is World War III. No, it's not World War III. It is a proxy war, and you can never have two nuclear powers coming to direct blows. Because there's only one place that ends. And that is a nuclear holocaust. Sorry, Ukraine is not worth a nuclear holocaust, especially with them not being a NATO member. And they shouldn't be added to NATO until after it's all said and done, if at all. I'm perfectly happy with them as a buffer state between us and the Russians. But they do have the right to their own determination of their own affairs. But I'm not cool with this. I'm not cool with the idea of it being used to draw us into a war. And it's the one person who has the most motivation, it seems, to lie is Zelensky. Now, I still think the Russians' balance of fault for creating this war is on the Russians. They're the bad guys in this war. But in this instance, this is why I said at the very beginning, no one is 100% pure in this. Zelensky, I'm looking at him the hardest. He isn't this pure white knight like some people want to make him out to be. So anyway, that's what I have on a very late Saturday night. You all take care. Make sure you smash that like button and hit the comment. Take care.